Welcome to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Hey, that's me. Hi, and welcome to Positive Talk. Our show features the best positive stories and people from around the globe as we endeavor to answer the universal question of why am I here and what is my purpose? Understanding that can change everything, and knowing your greatness is fundamental to living your best life. So join us right now as together we work to create the adventure of our lifetime. And welcome to Positive Talk, everybody. I'm so glad that you're here. We've got a great guest with an unbelievable story. Quite frankly, I'm tired just listening to the story that he was telling me before we got on the air, because he is a champion bicyclist. He has, see that little mountain behind me over there? He has climbed that twice. He's ridden his bike all around France when he was 13. When he was 14, he rode from the Olympic Peninsula, which is in where I live, Washington State, all the way to Boston. And that took an entire summer with his family. It's an incredible story of what he's got, and he's doing some really cool things today. And so without further ado, Rochelle's going to join us when she's able. And J.C. Chamberlain is with us today. And Mr. Chamberlain, sir, it is awesome to have you here.
Thank you so much, Kevin. It's really exciting to be with you.
Well, and I know you started and you're still I got tired just talking to you about how many miles you've ridden year to date and how many miles you're going to finish the year at. Tell us about you, because didn't you tell me that you've ridden 4,500 miles year to date, and you're going to finish the year at about 9,000 miles? Is that right?
Yeah, an average year for me is 9,000 or 10,000 miles. And since 1970, which I began keeping track of it, I've ridden 442,000 miles. So that's almost it. Yeah, that's a couple of times around the earth.
My car has barely gone more than that, and you've been doing this for a long time. And he's also got an incredible story that we are going to talk about, because if you've heard of NDEs, which are near-death experiences, JC experienced one, oddly enough, when he was on his bike, and was in an accident. We're going to talk about that in a little bit, but I want to talk to you about encompassing all that you do. So tell us a little bit about JC and all the things that you do.
Well, I think I'm a little bit of a futurist. I love the intersection of technology and humans. That's fascinated me, from a very early age. And in college, the one thing that I was really afraid of was nuclear energy. I didn't know anything about it. I wasn't so sure. But I knew that we needed energy to run our cities, and I was a student of urban policy. So I decided to study the future of nuclear power. And I had at Princeton experts in this field, not only in policy, but also in nuclear energy. And I was fortunate enough to work with them as my thesis advisors to study the Clinch River breeder reactor, which was potentially able to create an unlimited supply of plutonium to power nuclear reactors for the future. So it was a fascinating, intersection of humans and technology. But since then, I've been involved in a variety of different technology-driven fields, mostly software, but also in large-scale capital goods and things that have a global impact. What I look for is things that do good, that will scale to a mass market, because I don't have forever to live, and will enable a lot of people to benefit from those technologies. I'll tell a little story later on about meeting a very interesting venture investment banker from San Francisco in the early 2000s that had a profound influence on the last 25 years.
Boy, you have, well, I got to ask you, you're doing all of these these really interesting scientific things, when do you have time to ride as long as it takes to ride? Or have you mastered? Of course, you won a race when you were very young, as well. So maybe that this is just part of your DNA, the part of who you are. Is that because you love to ride? I know that.
I do love to ride. I was very fortunate to find something that I loved to do when I was a kid. My father left our home when I was 10 years old, and I could have responded to that by getting in trouble as a youth. But my mother gave me a single speed bicycle, and I began to ride it to the baseball diamond. And after a couple of years of doing that, she said, let's upgrade to 10 speeds and let's go on a 100-mile bike ride. And I began doing 2 or 3 of those a week, 3 or 4 of them, kept going. And we realized that I just loved being on 2 wheels. And the very next summer, when I turned 13, we planned out a trip around the perimeter of France. We did a 100-mile radius of London, saw all the sights. And then we brought our bikes with us on the ferry to France, and we rode the whole perimeter of France over the next 50 days. And we loved that trip so much that we said, we've got to do another one like this, but we would like to do it in the United States. So my brother said, well, why don't we ride from Seattle to Boston? And I had no idea where Seattle was, but he taught me all about that. And we designed and built our own tents, and we sent letters to campgrounds all over the United States, and we rode our bicycles from Seattle to Boston.
Didn't anybody tell you that the Olympic Peninsula is way farther west than the city of Seattle?
Yeah, we learned that in the first couple of days. And it's hilly. It's very hilly.
It is, because the Olympic Peninsula has got the Olympic Mountains that are there. And although I have to tell you, it's just a beautiful area, especially if you're going down. If you, for those of you that have never been to the Northwest, if you ever had the opportunity to go to the Olympic Peninsula and go down 101, you can go down 101 all the way to California. And it is just spectacular when you do that and see all the sights and all the oceans that are there and the mountains. And it really is almost there. It really is therapeutic, I think.
Oh, yeah. No, it's spectacular. And aside from the fact that we were riding 100 miles a day, we were sightseeing. And so we took time off on that trip to see special sights along the way. One of the things that we did in South Dakota, we stopped in Spearfish, which is the only place outside of Oberammergau in Germany where they conduct an outdoor version of the Passion Play. And
oh, wow.
We had ridden 200 miles the day before so that we could take a day off. And they took us over to the site where the Passion Play is conducted. And, I'm a 14-year-old. My friends were 14 and 15, 16 years old. And they said, you're going to be a Roman guard today, tonight in the Passion Play. And I said, well, what does he do? And they said, well, you get dressed up like a Roman guard, and then you look to the left and right. Just keep an eye out for the people that are on your left and your right. They gave me a spear, and they dressed me up in sandals and a toga. And I was in the play at age 14. And, we jeered at Christ, and we followed him up onto Golgotha, and he was carrying the cross, and it was a full depiction of the Passion Play. It was fascinating to be involved in that. And that was just one of the things that we did on our cross-country bike ride.
Well, and one of the other things that you did is you went by really close to Mount Rainier. And by the way, that's that big mountain that's in my background there that we get to look at all the time when it's not cloudy here in Seattle, which by the way, don't ever move here. It's cloudy and terrible and awful, and you wouldn't want to live here. But if you want to go to Mount Rainier, it's a great place to go. And you actually decided you were going to climb that mountain. Tell us that story.
Yeah, we had ridden our bicycles from Nia Bay out we started it with our rear wheels in the Pacific Ocean, and then we rode across through Seattle and the Hood River Canal came across, and then we went east up into southeast of Seattle, up around the hip of Mount Rainier, and I was so taken with this mountain. I said to my mom, I said, "What are those little black dots up there? They look like they're moving." And she said, "Yeah, those are people climbing the mountain." I said, "Oh, I want to climb that mountain someday. That looks just really cool." So, and I'd never done anything like that before. I'd done a little bit of backpacking, but we managed to finish our trip. And later on in the early 2000s, I was speaking at a conference in Seattle. And I said, I'm going to get up early tomorrow after my speaking commitment. And I rented a car and I drove out to the park and I met with a ranger. And I said, I'm a scoutmaster back in Virginia. Would it be possible to bring my scouts here and to do the Wonderland Trail and to climb Mount Rainier? And she said, well, they have to be 16 years old. And there's a great group that's called Rainier Mountaineering Inc. And they run these trips, and they're authorized by the National Park Service to guide trips to the summit. So I brought out 8 scouts, and the next year, and we did the whole Wonderland Trail, which is 93 miles. We did that in 8 days. Then we took a day off, and we got set up by Rainier Mountaineering, and they took us up and they ran us through a glacier training. So traverse, they taught us how to behave on the mountain. And then the next day we climbed up to Camp Muir. And Camp Muir is at about 10,000 feet. And then the following morning at about 1 a.m., you put on an avalanche beacon. You strap on all your clothing, and then you get tied on a rope with your guide. And by about 7 or 8 in the morning, you're on the summit at 14,000 feet. So we went to the summit with 8 scouts, and then we came back 2 years later and we did it again.
That's amazing. That's incredible. I've met a few people that have climbed the mountain, and some of them have really had a good experience, and some of them not. I'm glad you had a good guide to do that. But I want to go back to the bicycling, because how did you set it up when you were going 100 miles a day for 40 or 50 days? Did you? And I know you had camping equipment and stuff. Did you carry food with you? Did you have it dropped off in certain way? How logistically, how did all of this work? In case somebody out there is crazy enough to do this.
Good question. And there are well-organized trips that do it today. At the time, my mother, who was reading for her master's degree in library science. And so every day she would go ahead to the pre-appointed lunch stop, and we would meet her there and have lunch. And then she would drive on ahead to where we were going to camp each night and meet us there. And then she would procure the food. We were responsible for setting up camp, cooking dinner, cleaning up. We would break camp in the morning, put everything in the car, and she would drive on to the next day. So we did that for 40 days. I think we took 6 rest days. So the total trip was 46 days, and we rode 100 miles a day for 40 days.
So I gotta ask you, you're the friends of your mom, when you were 14 years old and you did this, did they say, you're going to do what with your 14-year-old son? And you're going to be in a car for 40 days, and you're going to go shopping and do that, and you're going to sleep on the ground. And are you crazy, lady? Did she have anybody? By the way, your mother's incredible.
Yeah, she really had a profound influence in my life. One of the things that she used to tell us when we were young was when we were at a moment where we needed some encouragement, she would say, "Don't worry, nothing is going to be okay." And, the reality is that once you integrate that idea into your life, it changes for the good how you approach your life. You realize that life is not going to go your way. Things are not going to go your way. And so if you show up ready for anything, you're going to succeed. And that's the way my life turned out, thanks to her.
Say that line again, because I want to put that on a T-shirt.
Don't worry, honey. Nothing is going to be okay.
That is brilliant. That is simply brilliant. And at 14, most kids are having, like I was playing baseball, but most kids are riding across the country. Was she worried about safety, or were you guys just such good riders that you could avoid all of the traffic and all the stuff that is out there on the roads?
Oh my gosh, Kevin, we saw every body part you could have possibly imagined flashed at us out the window of a car. we had beer bottles thrown at us. We were ridden off the road. We crashed ourselves, just foolishly. Sometimes we lost control of our bikes and crashed. One time I was having a water bottle fight with one of the girls on the trip, and it just in fun. And we managed to lock handlebars, and we both went down on the pavement. And we were in a bad place. I had a big gash in my knee, and she had multiple injuries. And we managed to flag down a guy that was driving a truck full of wheat. And he put our bikes up in the wheat. He just threw the bikes up into the produce. And we got in the cab, and he took us into town where we got some bandages at the local police station, and our bikes were rideable, and we kept riding, and we finished that day. So I think what we learned was that falling down is part of bike riding, and it's not, it's about how you choose to get up. And that reflected throughout my life, was choosing how to get up after a setback.
Well, and that's the thing. We all have setbacks. It's how we get up and what we do with those setbacks that really dictate how we can be and how special we can be. We need to take a break. And by the way, we're talking with J.C. Chamberlain. If you want to go to his website, J.C., how do they get to your website?
Antidotethebook.com. And Antidotethebook.com.
We got so much to talk about. I needed to do this. We'll be right back and to talk more with JC.
You became a real estate agent for freedom, success, and real momentum. So why are you still stuck waiting for closings to save you? I'm Ophir Adar, founder of Real Momentum, and I help agents like you become seven-figure earners. My first client that I coached, brand new agent, made $250,000 back in 2006. What's the secret? You feed your white wolf. That's the part of you that's bold and unstoppable and a closer and able to build rapport quickly. So click Get Listings at Real Momentum and let's unleash your real estate potential.
And welcome back, everybody. We are talking with J.C. Chamberlain. He has done so much. He's an author. He is a professional. I don't know if you're professional, but you are a bike rider of note. You climb mountains. You've lived an extraordinary life. Do you think of it as an extraordinary life when you're talking about it?
Honestly, I have a huge curiosity about everything. I want to learn about how the world works. I've probably gotten into a certain amount of trouble just because I tend to bite off more than I can chew, and then I figure out a way to swallow it. But I've been involved in a lot of different things in my lifetime, and I think I have to credit my family for pushing me as a young child to learn about the world, to learn a lot of language. and to always be an explorer.
So in the second half of the show, I really, really want to talk about the accident you had and this subsequent experience that you had. But before we do that, I want to talk about your book and tell us what motivated you to write the book and where can people find it?
Sure. Well, that's great. Yeah, I wasn't sure I wanted to write a book because it seemed like a lot of work to me. And,
yeah.
I thought I had other things to do. But the more the book came about because 13 years ago, I was on a country road riding with one other bike rider, and we were heading east. We went through an intersection that we didn't have a stop sign, but the north-south traffic had a stop sign. And a guy ran that stop sign on the gas at 55 miles an hour.
Oh, my.
And I happened to be the first bike rider to come to the intersection, and I got wiped out. And I was on the car about a half a second, but it did a lot of damage to my body, and it was a nearly fatal accident. I flew 100 feet, and I landed up face down in the gravel on the other side of the intersection. It was an incredible, if you think about it, how the mind isolates us from the details of something that is traumatic like that. I don't have any direct recollection of the crash. It's all been reconstructed through police reports and personal accounts. But the guy who hit me happens to be an ER doc, an emergency room physician. And the guy that I was riding with, another professional cyclist like me, happens to be the chief of anesthesiology at the trauma center where they took me. So I had two MDs who had a front row seat to the impact. And they both shared with me later that they assumed I was dead. But their medical training kicked in, and they rushed over to me. They discovered that I had a pulse and that I was breathing, but I was out. I was really out. So some pretty extraordinary things happened next, and they essentially saved my life. They got me in an ambulance, and I was in and out of shock. I was suddenly in the presence of the whole higher power.
Well, and I want you to hold that for a second because I got a question for you.
Yeah.
Because you got hit and you went on the hood of the car, and but you don't remember any of it. Is that indicative of when we think of accidents that are fatal, and we think, oh, there must have been a great deal of pain, there must have been, but in a lot of cases that's not the case, is it? That because it doesn't. You're not consciously aware of everything that is going on with you. Would that be a fair characterization?
Yeah, I think I was only on the car about a half a second, and so you just can't imagine piecing all those details together in that brief moment. But
do you remember being in the gravel at all?
No, I don't remember anything from the hit. I remember being on a country road riding with my buddy, and then about an hour and a half later, in real time, I woke up in an emergency room.
That by the way, that's a real blessing that you had. First of all, was the doctor who hit you and ran the stop sign, was he like on his way to like an emergency or something, or did he just not pay attention?
He happened to live in a neighborhood near where I was hit, so he knew the area very well. And I learned all of this later. There was a big truck behind me and the other bike rider that he had turned his attention to this truck, and he wasn't on his phone or anything else. He was just distracted by the truck that was behind us. And since he knew the area, he figured he could jump the stop sign and get through the intersection ahead of the truck. And he didn't refocus on the hood of his car until I was on the hood of his car. And at that point, I took out the windshield with my head. My helmet was probably saved my life. I took off the right-hand rear view mirror with my rib cage from back to front, broke a few ribs. Ultimately, I smashed my left shoulder through the right rear passenger window of his SUV, and the frame of the car caught me and separated me from my bike and threw me 100 feet.
And your bike was dead too, wasn't it?
It was crumpled.
And by the way, we're talking with J.C. Chamberlain, and the name of the book again is
Antidote, a new emotional wealth framework.
And we need to talk about that as well. And we've actually got a show and tell that we're going to talk to us about that. Do you want to bring that up now so that you can explain it?
Sure, I can. Let's see. I can put that on the screen. I think
I can put it right up there for you.
You can bring it up. Yeah, that's it. This is the back cover of the book, and I'm happy to flip it to the title page, but you can see it right on there. The front cover is Antidote, a new emotional wealth framework to build resilience. And this is what you'll see if you look for it. And then the back cover talks about the framework itself and how everything in our life begins with our dreams. And then we have these 6 other emotional wealth bank accounts. Emotional bank accounts are your resources to get back when you have a setback.
Oh, that is awesome. And all of these things that we're talking about being your health, learning, earning, giving, love, spirit, and dreams is right in the middle of all of that, and our dream. And so that is awesome. So I highly suggest that that you go and get the book, and it's J.C. Chamberlain, and again it's Antidote. Giving
a new emotional wealth framework to build resilience.
How did you come up with this, by the way? And I need to take. No, we got a little bit of time. How did you come up with the title, and how did you come up with the book and decide to write it?
Well, after I got hit by the car, I was having some trouble telling the story. People wanted to know what happened, and I even wanted to know what happened, and so I began to try to tell the story, and it was too much trauma. And I don't know if you're familiar with events like that, but they can block you from having access to the rest of your life if you don't get in touch with what happened and how it happened, and then understand it and compartmentalize it. And so I eventually got to a point where I could tell the story. People said, you need to write about that, because people need something like this. They need to know that you've survived something, because they may need courage in their own life. So my experience was in the ER, and the day after the accident, one surgeon after another came to my bedside. And eventually the message was very clear to me: if you work hard, you can learn to walk again, but you will never ride a bike.
How wrong they were.
And I really could not abide by that prediction. I did not know what a life could be like without moving. And so I said to them, I don't know how I'll do that, but I'm going to learn to ride. And one by one, my different parts of my life, my communities showed up for me. And at a time when I was in despair, I wasn't sure how the rest of my life would turn out. Even my brother, who knew me very well, came to my bedside in the rehab hospital, and he said, I know that your bones will heal, because I've seen you heal from bicycling accidents in all of our racing together. He said, but I worry that your ego will not heal, that your persona as a champion will never be the same. And that was devastating to me. And the tears just poured out of me, because at that moment, I thought he might be right, that was going to be gone forever. And
but
yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, but you're a resilient guy, and you were not going to let that stand. And because you decided that you were not going to let that stand, it didn't stand, and you were able to get the stuff to recover and to regain your health and be able to do what you want to do. It's amazing, the power of the mind and the power of your passion and your decision to make it work, rather than to take somebody else's word for it. Oh no, you're never going to be able to do that again. And it's like, bullcrap, I will too. And you've proved them wrong. And when we come back from this break, I want to talk about that. And also, I want to talk about your encounter with a higher power when you were lying on the gravel road and you were, in my mind, you were very, very near death. And we would call that an NDE, and a near-death experience. And when we come back from this real quick break, we're only got a minute and 10 seconds, so don't anybody go anywhere. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Brushwood Media Network, the best in syndicated talk, news, and entertainment shows.
As you go about your daily life, look closer. As you gather with family and friends who love and support you, look closer. There are youth right in your community who don't have the home, warmth, and healing you have. So look closer. Every year across America, a staggering 4.2 million youth are homeless or trafficked. And for 50 years, Covenant House has worked relentlessly to keep them safe and protected. Tonight, 2,000 young people will sleep safely in a Covenant House bed. And tomorrow, they will wake up surrounded by love. They get clean clothes, hot meals, medical care, and a safe place to sleep. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. In sites across America to help them fulfill the great promise of their lives. So look closer at Covenant House. To help or get help, go to covenanthouse.org.
And welcome back to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald, and JC Chamberlain is here, and he is an author. He's a championship bike rider. He's a mountain climber, and he is I did a blog about what I called true grit, or basically grit. And what it was, and one of them was resilience, gratitude, resilience, intention, and toughness. You have what I would call authentic grit, because you did not take no for an answer. But did you think, as many miles as you've ridden, and 40,000, did you ever think that would happen to you, that you would get hit like that and almost killed?
Well, you never think that it's in your script. I think we can't go out on a bike ride and think, well, I'm going to get hit today. We don't think that way. I think the odds are that at some point you're going to fall down. At some point, maybe you're going to be in an accident. And it's possible. It's always possible. I tend to ride in larger groups. I try to ride mostly on trails. Now that I'm 68, I think a little bit about that when I set out on my daily journey on the bike. Anything is possible. And I think we can tip the odds in our favor. But it can happen. And the question is, how will you cope with it?
Yes. And being resilient and being tough, and having the intention of making it work, and the gratitude to continue to go. That is a really big deal. And I want you to tell us the story, if you would be so kind, sir, of when you were lying there and the doctors were there, the anesthesiologist and the emergency room doc, and they were scared that you were gone and stuff, and you don't remember any of this, but you do have a memory of what happened to you. So tell us the story.
Sure. Actually, I was in the ambulance, and I was in and out of shock. I had given Pete, my buddy, a phone number for my girlfriend, which turned out to be accurate. And then I checked out, and it was crystal clear. I was in the presence of the higher power. And it was like we'd always known each other. As a Christian, I had always held space for God to come into my life. I just never imagined that it would take an accident of this extent. And I was welcome to ask anything. So I said, why me? Why now? Why this? What do you want from me? And God's reply did not require me to have ears or a mouth. And God simply said, there was a fatal accident in your future that only I can see. And because I'm not done with you, I chose this accident because it's survivable, but it will change the course of your life so that fatal accident is no longer in your future. And 90 minutes later, I woke up in an ER.
Now, when you had this experience, did you feel like, what were your sensations? Did you feel an amazing amount of love around you? Did you have the opportunity to see other people, or maybe the colors and the vibrancy of everything around you and the reality of everything around you? Because it's not it's actually more real, I've been told by some people, than it is here. Was it that way for you? Was it more real there?
It was just crystal clear, but there was no requirement for a physical body.
Right.
It was just spiritual connection. And it didn't require either one of us to have a physical body. We simply had to have an entity, and it was clear that we cared about each other. And so this communication that I had was without any overtones. There were no requirements for the communication to take place. It was simply being fully present.
Well, as an example, you didn't have your vocal cords were still in the ambulance or in the emergency room, and so you could not talk. But because of our communication abilities with telepathy and talking back and forth to another spirit, you don't need to have ears. You can sense all of those things happening around you.
Yeah, I believe so. I mean, I wouldn't have said so if I hadn't experienced it myself.
Yeah.
And so now I can say, that I clearly have had an experience like that. It's not the only time in my life that I've had an out of body experience. And I have experienced it a couple of times in bicycle racing. And one time when I was in a car with my brother, and he woke me up in the middle of the night to get directions. And I could see down on the whole situation from about 600 feet above the car. And, it just seemed perfectly natural to me to be able to give him directions, even though I had been sleeping. And I said, go to the end of this street, turn left, you're going to see the on-ramp for the interstate, which from the street level was impossible to see. And so I know that these things are possible. And in this case, I can now look back on having this traumatic experience of being hit by the car. But I was also given something very blissful, which was this direct communication with the higher power.
And when he said, Yeah, you can ask anything you want. Did you like think about, well, how do I solve this nuclear thing? Because you were working on that, and that was part of your work. Did you, or what's the future hold for me, or any of those things? Now, I've also been told that in a lot of cases, a lot of information just comes to you, and you know things that you didn't know here, or you didn't know when you were just normally conscious, that you suddenly knew. But did you think about other questions to ask him, or her, whoever, whatever gender? I don't know.
Yeah, it was really an experience with a caring entity, and I would have to say it was just crystal clear presence. It was not complicated in any way, and it was so satisfying in the moment. And when I woke up, I was clearly in a bad situation. There was a person pulling a thread out of my forehead and tying a knot, and then clipped it, and pulled a thread out of my chin and clipped it. And I could see out of the corner of my eye that this was a person in green scrubs. And once they were finished with that, they walked away, and I could see my girlfriend standing there, and she had a popsicle stick with a sponge on the end of it that was giving me water on my lips. And I looked at her. I couldn't turn my head. I was just terrified because my head was in some kind of a brace. And I said, "Where am I?" And she said, "Well, you were in a bad crash on your bicycle, and now you're in a safe place." And the next thought that occurred to me was, is my bike okay?
That's a typical bike guy, because you want to make sure your bike is okay. Well, and honestly, you probably had, because you ride so much, you had a pretty pricey bike.
Oh, yeah. But I mean, as a practical matter, I knew that if my bike was okay, I could get up and finish the ride. And I was on a ride. It was a nice day. I had no idea that now I'm paralyzed and I've got my head in a brace and I'm in an ER. And one thing led to another. I could see down at the foot of my feet, there was Pete, the guy that I had been riding with, and he was in street clothes. And that seemed kind of strange to me because we were on a bike ride together, and now he's standing at the foot of my bed in street clothes. And there was one more thing. There was a stranger holding my left hand. I'd never seen this guy before. And he was holding my left hand. And you know how we have an impulse when someone's holding our hand to hold it back, just give it a squeeze. And I realized that I couldn't do that. My left side was completely useless. And he seemed very pleased that I had opened my eyes. Well, it turns out he was the guy that hit me, and he had followed the ambulance to the hospital, and he was standing at my bedside holding my hand.
And he was an emergency doc at the same time.
And he did the right thing. He helped me get an ambulance. He followed the ambulance to the hospital. He was present when I woke up. So it was really an amazing experience that I had there. As soon as I woke up, I was introduced to all the characters that were going to play a role in my recovery.
Exactly. And by the way, Rochelle has joined us. How you doing, kiddo?
I am doing much better. I am happy to be here and hearing the story of JC. Just coming into that, all of that was miraculous. And I think sometimes we have a lot of moments in our life where if we were to just stop and not let time be the factor of things, we might handle things differently.
Sure.
Well, and by the way, he's a year older than me. When's your birthday, by the way?
January 15th.
Hey.
All right, so you're 6 months older than me, and he's
Happy
ridden
birthday.
Thank you. He's ridden 4,500 miles. I haven't even driven 4,500 miles this year. So it's amazing to me. And JC Chamberlain is with us. We need to take a real quick break, but your story is remarkable. You are leading a remarkable life. And when we come back, I want to ask you about the book some more, because I think it can be very helpful to somebody that is going through or has gone through or even will be going through trauma in their life. Because so we'll be right at the back, and we're just going to be gone for a very brief little moment or two, and we'll be right back.
When the game is on the line, championship teams know the game plan. They communicate and work together to win. We all need a game plan to protect ourselves online. Talk to family and friends so they know how to stay safe too. Create strong passwords, turn on multi-factor authentication, update software, and recognize and report phishing, because online safety is not something you want to fumble. Get more game-winning tips at CISA.gov/secure our world. Then share them with family and friends.
And welcome back to Positive Talk with Brachelle. She's right there. And Brachelle, I know that you've been awfully quiet this episode, so I thought maybe I'd give you an opportunity to ask a question. Oh, wait a minute. You just got here. But I had to ask a question or two.
Yeah, I mean, was there something specific that made you have the idea, if you didn't already go over this, that was like, I'm gonna write a book, an experience, or someone told you like, hey, you should totally turn this into a book?
Yeah, book is a lot of work. And I had a really wonderful book coach, Sam Horn, who just encouraged me to write. And that was at a time when I was, not doing great in terms of my recovery. And she said, these stories, people need to hear your story. So just write what comes to you. And she was very supportive. She ultimately helped me find a publisher. And that made all the difference for me. The publisher brought me an editor that took what I consider to be a mediocre manuscript, and they turned it into a good book. So I think that whole process of composing and polishing a book, is critical to getting it out into the world and allowing more people to hear the message. I will say this. I also have a Kindle version of the book, and I recorded the audiobook. And I think that was one of the best things that I did out of this whole process, was go into the studio and record the book.
That's a lot of fun to do.
Kevin, you cut out. Say that one more time.
That's a lot of fun to do, but that's a lot of work. Brachelle, did you put on the canceling thing again?
Yes. Did it help?
No, it hurt it. So take that out.
There's a static coming from your end that is really loud if that's on.
And that's coming from my.
Yes, I believe so. I'll turn it back on, and you guys can.
Well, let me put myself on mute here for a second.
Anyway, as you were saying, I'm glad that you had somebody that was really supportive, somebody that pushed you. I know even in times where you specifically don't want to do something is exactly when you should do it. And I'm guessing it took a lot of time.
It did take time. I write in the first person, and so I create dialogue. All of the stories in the book are dialogue between people, and that allows the reader to see themselves in the scene. And that takes more time to create all the dialogue.
Yeah.
But it was so satisfying to me. I think the other part of the reason that I was able to write the book is that these different parts of my life leaned in to help me get through this time. My sport, my family, my work, my church, all of the different aspects of my life that appear in the Emotional Wellth framework helped me to see that there were these parts of my life that are the parts of your life, and that you have these emotional bank accounts, and that we can all dip into those accounts. We each have a balance in our emotional bank accounts that we can use to get back from a setback.
Very true. Very true.
Is that better?
Perfect. You sound amazing now.
Jeez. It is so vital that we all understand that the experiences that we have, we can overcome, especially the bad experiences, if we do it with the right mindset, and do it through your brain and your heart and your whole being, really, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the turning points in my whole experience was that physically, I didn't think I was ever going to be able to ride again, and that was an important thing for me in my life. I had already ridden a couple 100,000 miles, and it was really an important part of my life. And now I'm on crutches and hobbling around, my apartment. And my best friend, with whom I owned a business, he showed up one morning with coffee, and we had our little business meeting. And he said, and it was February in Virginia, so it's not really nice weather outside. He said, "Go get dressed to ride. We're going to ride today." And I said, "Did you miss the part that I'm on crutches?" He said, "You can lean those against the wall. I will get you to the bike." And he had brought my tandem that he had stored my tandem in his garage. I didn't have space for it. And he had brought that bike. He had checked the measurements from my single bike and transferred them to the rear position on the tandem. And he got me to the bike, and we rode 5 miles that day. Next day, he showed up with coffee, and he said, "Get dressed. We're going to ride again." And we rode 10 miles that day. And we kept riding every single day, and we rode more and more. And by the end of that year, we had ridden 5,000 miles together.
On a tandem bike.
He helped me learn to balance again. He helped me regain my confidence. It made all the difference in my recovery. And I learned that was one part of my life where I had paid it forward. And it was a relationship that I had that showed up for me in my time of need.
Congratulations. And by the way, I'm sure that you spent a lot of time thanking him. But I think a steak dinner would be in order.
Oh yeah, he definitely appreciates food. He's a gift himself.
Well, I got to tell you, that's the one thing about bike riding, and is that they'll all tell me. Now, I don't ride a bike at this point in time, but I'm gonna try and maybe get back into it. But they tell me that when you're riding a bike and you're riding 100 miles in a day, you can eat anything you want because you're burning so many calories.
Yeah, that's true. Yep. It took me a long time in the last several years. I decided that I had come far enough. Now, it was 13 years ago. About 5 years ago, I thought, well, maybe I could enter a race again. And it took me a couple more years of training before I could actually do that. And I've had to understand better how my race nutrition needs to support the work I want to do. And so race nutrition has advanced dramatically since I was a teenager. Technology of bicycles has changed a lot. Now we ride on carbon everything. It's so much lighter, and the techniques for training have changed. And so I've been able to prepare better. But just recently, I entered the Grand Fondo, New York National, as it was the World Championship in New York. In May of this year, and I placed 10th in my age group. That was my first mass start sprint finish event since the accident.
That is, yeah, congratulations. That's really good. That's really, you must be very proud.
That was so satisfying just to finish, and it was hard, but it should be hard. That's something that is a magnitude of difficulty greater than anything that I had tried over the last 13 years.
And by the way, I have the title for your second book. You want to hear it?
Okay. Yeah.
Nutrition for bicycle champions.
Hey.
That's right. Fuel for life. Yep.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure it doesn't include French fries. Would that be true?
Yes, that's true.
Good.
It
That's
doesn't
an
mean
inside joke.
I don't. It doesn't mean I don't like French fries from time to time. I do enjoy the taste, but that's not my staple. That's right.
That's very good. We're going to come to the end of our time together, but it's been great fun having you here, and I really appreciate all the work that you've done, and I want you to take a couple of moments and to tell our audience about your resilience and your ability to overcome what for most people might have been the end of their life for them, and how you have regained who you are. And I know there's a spiritual component to it, and it's also who you are as a man as well. But share that with us if you wouldn't mind.
Well, I think I shared earlier with you that my mom would say to us, and when we had times when we needed encouragement.
Oh, before you say that, Rochelle, make sure you write this down because it's got to go on a T-shirt. Go ahead.
Okay.
My mom would say to us, "Don't worry, nothing is going to be okay."
I love that.
Yeah, there you go. Don't worry, nothing is going to be okay. And once you understand that that's the way life is going to go, it allows you to show up for life in a very different way. And we became over prepared as kids because we knew that nothing was going to go okay. Another thing that she would say to us was, remember, we're all in this alone. And you think of that as being kind of a little bit contradictory from we're all in this together, but the reality is we are responsible for our filament, our little thread of this amazing cloth that we call humankind. So we are in this alone, but we are connected to everyone and everything. And I think having that awareness throughout my life has made all the difference, especially in my recovery, especially in my spiritual connection. It has allowed me to bounce back from all kinds of setbacks because I have this self determination, and yet I realize that I need to rely on others too. And that's where I get my resilience. And everybody has this same element in their life. They just have to connect with it.
And we've been talking with JC Chamberlain, and if you would like to tell us what your website is so people can go find you and stuff like that.
So go to antidotethebook.com, ANTIDOTE, thebook.com. And the reason we use Antidote is because no doctor can prescribe it and no nurse can inject it. It's something that is simply in you.
And JC, I know that you'll appreciate, and I'm not going to tell the story right now, but look it up. If you look at Bannister, Roger Bannister, and what he was able to do in his life, that was not possible. Doctor said, no, you can't do that. Nobody can break the 4-minute mile. Are you kidding me? The human body can't go that fast. It just doesn't work that way. Until he did. And we can all take a little bit of courage from that, I think. And JC, thank you so much for being here. I have thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. And
thank you, Kevin, for having me. I really enjoyed it. And thank you, Rochelle.
Of course.
Have a great day, everybody. Thanks for listening to this episode of Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Our purpose is to provide everyone with a positive, entertaining, and educational experience. I would love your feedback and comments about the show, including possible topics and great guest suggestions. Please email me at kevin@kmmedia.pro.
And remember, be kind to one another because each other's all we've got. That's Kevin